students, we're looking at under the ground. Okay, there's something called groundwater. And in the spring, when you're walking and it's smushy on the grass, that means that the groundwater is all the way up to the surface. And after, you know, the rains stop and it gets more towards summer, that same ground is now, you're just walking on regular ground. When you see standing water on the ground, you know that the ground is very saturated. Now, there's certain things about underground. There are things called the water table, which is the level of the groundwater, and that changes, that fluctuates. When we were out at the river was about 2 feet below the bank. If we had taken a shovel and dug a hole 2 feet down, we would have hit water, because the river water is showing us where the groundwater is, what level the groundwater is. There's water under the ground. That's how Dr. Swift can have her well in Farmington Hills. The well goes down to the groundwater. The water table is simply the top where the groundwater ends, and that can change as well. That fluctuates. Like I said, in spring, when you're walking and the ground's all smushy, that means the groundwater's right up to the surface. The water table is right at the surface. That fluctuates several feet per year, depending on how much rain we're getting. Sometimes you'll be driving, like if you drive through Kentucky on I-75, you'll actually see water coming out of the rocks above you. How is it possible that there's water coming out of rocks that are above you? That would mean the groundwater is above you. You should be driving through water. Well, that's when you have something like a perched water table, where you have some kind of thing like clay, which is impermeable. Clay is very hydrophilic. It grabs the water and holds on, doesn't want to let it go. It's pretty much impermeable. Whereas if you just have sand or a bunch of pebbles, that water's going to flow right through. If you have solid clay, that water is not going to go through. In fact, the hill over in Allen Park is over a big clay mine where a lot of industrial waste have been dumped, and it was kind of sealed off with clay. We have a lot of places where we store dangerous things from manufacturing and so on in these kind of clay chambers, because the clay doesn't let it out. You know, it won't let it seep through. Okay, so looking at this, we've got the zone of saturation, which just means between the sand particles, pebbles, whatever's down there, we've got water. You're below the water table. And then we've got the zone of aeration, which means that there's air between the particles. That's very simple. Now, why is this well successful? Well, because it's above the water table. If it rained and rained and rained a lot, that well could possibly work when there was lots and lots of rain. But that's an unsuccessful well. They didn't dig it deep enough. They needed to go deeper. Now, right now in Michigan, we have a huge fight. It's been going on for years with Nestle and Ice Mountain. Fact, Nestle, Absopure, there are a lot of water bottling companies in Michigan. The dirty secret is they can pull out as much water as the state permit says. They don't pay at all for that water. Ice Mountain is very successful because everyone, likes to drink bottled water, which you'll have a little lesson called It's Just a Bottle of Water, and you're going to kind of find out just how that affects our environment. But nonetheless, Nestle has been fighting. In western Michigan, that's where they suck the groundwater out. That's where they get their water from. And the environmentalists over there are just fighting tooth and nail, because this is what happens. So Nestle's been sucking out a certain amount of water for years, and then they said, we want to make that way more. We want to start sucking out, I forget how much more, at least 4 times more. It might be 10 times more, I'm not sure. It's like 400,000 plus gallons per minute. That's how much water they want to suck out of the ground. And that's fine as long as it's replenished by rain. So the water table just, you know, the groundwater is fine as long as you're not sucking out more than nature is putting in. In California, the ground has subsided at least 20 feet. In other words, they've sucked out so much water that hasn't been replenished that the ground just sunk. There's a picture in your textbook of a telephone pole that says at the top, this is where the land was in 1926. This is where the land was at the top of that telephone pole. It has subsided or sunk down all the way to the bottom of that telephone pole. It's just shocking. But that's why this fight, and I put the link in on Canvas, that's why this fight has been going on. Nestle won, and then the environmentalists challenged them. April 20th, Nestle won. Now there's a challenge to that. In the meantime, they've made their bottling, whatever it was, quadruple, I don't know the detail, but it's really, really high. What happens when you suck more water out than is replenished is these were very successful, fine wells, because everyone was just using a reasonable amount that was replenished by nature. But when somebody wants to suck out more than nature can replenish, and this is the fear of all the people in that area, it costs at least $10,000 to dig a successful well. It's a very expensive process. You don't have to pay for your water, but you have to pay to dig the well. When someone sucks out more than is replenished, you get this cone of depression, and this is what people in Western Michigan are afraid of, that all their wells are going to go dry. Because Nestle wants to suck out more free water, they don't pay a penny for the water. We have great water in Michigan. We're known for our water. Absopure, down in the Irish Hills, they're sucking out tons of water to make Absopure bottled water. Ice Mountain, Nestle, is in Western Michigan, sucking out water to get that good spring water that everyone likes to drink. We have lots and lots of that going on, but again, if you don't respect the environment, if you take more than the environment can put in, you're going to end up with some issues. So when you're doing that bottled water lesson, just make sure you pay really close attention to the effects of bottled water on our environment. There's also an 8-minute video I want you to watch, the story of bottled water. It will knock your socks off. Make sure you watch that video.